We are in the final phase and the climax of God's creation, what everything before has been prepared for, which is God's masterpiece. And his masterpiece is human beings, a creature unlike anything else in the universe. Now, maybe you're thinking humans are the worst. Other people, not us, all they do is steal, kill, and destroy. How can they be God's masterpiece? Well, being God's masterpiece is not dependent upon what we do, what we look like, what we achieve, how old we are, or anything else, any other qualities. We are God's masterpiece because of what we are. We are the image of God. And that's what we see here in verse 26. Let's go ahead and read verse 26 of Genesis chapter 1. It said, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, all the earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth." You see, God's masterpiece is that we're made in the image of God. This is what sets us apart from the rest of creation. And we see here he is going to make mankind in his image, not the image or likeness of any other created being. And we see him using the words us and our in reference to this. We are not the evolved form of lesser creatures. We are specially made in the image of God. Now, we've heard this phrase, image of God, multiple times. What does it mean to be made in the image of God? Well, there are three meanings to this, and these are going to help us to answer our question of, again, why? Why were we made? So the first meaning of what it means to be made in the image of God is representation. It means we are the representation of God on the earth. Human beings are representatives for God on the earth, and that means we carry out his will and act in ways that reflect who he is. This is our purpose, to point the rest of creation back to God. This is why God forbid the creation of idols. They could never represent him. They are dead, they are lifeless, they are impersonal statues. They are not living, active, and personal like our God is. Plus, God does not need us to be making images of himself because he already did that with us. You see, this representation, we are representatives of God, and this is accomplished by our actions, which we see in verse 26 is to rule the earth. And so our second meaning of the image of God is rulership. This is the explicit purpose given to us in verse 26. We are to rule over the earth, to watch over it, to govern it, to cultivate it, and to even enjoy it. You see, rulership is a task one unique to image bearers that sets us apart from creation, but God also designed us for this task, and doing so fulfills us and satisfies us. So to represent God, it means we are to rule, but we are to rule like God. We are to rule with justice, with love, with mercy, with grace, with truth, etc. The third meaning of the image of God is worth. Being made in the image of God means we have inerrant and unchanging worth, regardless of the extent or the degree we do the above, the representing and ruling. Being the image of God is who we are, regardless of any physical measurement. No human being either decreases or increases this value for themselves, nor can they increase or decrease the value of others. Sin does not change our worth to God, and Jesus' incarnation and resurrection proves that our worth to him remains unchanged despite our sin. But a problem, and this is going to answer the question from the intro, is how can mankind be God's masterpiece? The problem is that mankind has a horrible job being the image of God. We have ruled with greed and injustice and hate and mercilessness and lies and inequality and all the things that are not God. The world that we look out and see, the world that we observe, is the product of mankind's failure to live as image bearers of God. And as such, we have not pointed others to God, which is our purpose, But in fact, we have pointed people away from God. We have pointed creation away from God. And because of sin, we can no longer live as image bearers of God. And in fact, we are more representative of Satan than we are of God, especially if it's our actions that represent these people, these persons. So what's the solution? Well, it's simple. The solution is Jesus. Jesus said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. He exemplified for us what it means to represent God in the world. And Jesus sacrificed his life so that we could be restored and able to fulfill our purpose of being image bearers, of representing God the way that he deserves and desires to be represented. And so if you've accepted the gospel, then live as the image of God in the world. We are his image bearers and should represent God the way that he is, both publicly and privately. We're to live like Jesus, living in a way that reflects the nature and the character of God. So how do we do that? How do we live like this? How do we live as his image bearers? So number one, we need to submit our life. Right? Submit our life to Christ for this purpose, living to represent him, to represent all that he stands for. Number two, we need to examine our life. Examine our life for areas in our hearts, areas in our minds, areas in our actions that need to be aligned with Christ, that need to be consistent with who he is and what he expects. And then number three, we need to transform our lives. Transforming your life happens by giving your life to the disciplines of prayer, of study, of application, and of fellowship with other believers. And it's through these things that God works in us and changes us to be able to represent him in the world, to be his image bearers.